Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Goliath's webinar today. Today, we're really going to talk about how you can document and prove two of the most nagging questions that we hear IT pros getting, especially from management and the business when it comes to remote workers on Citrix and Horizon. To do that, you have myself, Stacey Leidwinger. I run marketing here at Goliath, and you have Avi Lipp here today, who's one of our senior technical consultants. So before we jump into the content, and we've got some people logging in, I do want to do just quick housekeeping. In terms of agenda today, we're going to really talk about what those two questions are that almost everyone is receiving from their managers around remote workers. We're going to talk to you about some use cases and how you can use data provided by Goliath, and then we'll show you how easy it is to get that data leveraging Goliath technology. We are going to leave quite a bit of time for questions. We got a few in advance. We typically like to ask our attendees to send them. And if you have them live, please submit them. And one question we always get is, will this recording be available? Yes, within 24 hours, you'll have a copy of this recording in your inbox that you can refer back to or even share with your colleagues. So with that, I have two slides just to talk about Goliath and level set. So if you're not familiar with Goliath, we offer purpose-built software to monitor and troubleshoot end-user experience, regardless of where your applications, workloads, or users are located. What really provides high value to our clients is the embedded intelligence and automation that is part of our software, where we will automatically discover your entire Citrix or Horizon environment. We have hundreds of pre-built monitoring rules in our solution, looking for any event, failure point, or condition that could impact end-user experience. And then we will proactively alert you when thresholds are exceeded. And those thresholds come from industry best practices of Citrix, Horizon, Microsoft, AWS, and even a decade of our own knowledge working for clients just like yourself. When our clients leverage Goliath, what they're able to do is they're able to anticipate issues before users are even impacted and resolve them. They're able, with the data we provide, both historical and real time, and all surrounding that end user experience, troubleshoot and resolve issues very quickly, and then document that those resolutions and permanent fix actions have occurred, proving to management that the problem has actually been solved. Also allows for you to trend information over time around user activity, performance, system performance. What our clients tell us is by using Goliath, they transform their entire IT department from reactive to proactive. And if we go to the next slide, this is just a handful of the clients that leverage Goliath today. And if you go and talk to them, they will say that because of that embedded intelligence and automation, when they use Goliath, it's as if they've added 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts to their staff. Those experts are available 24/7 by 365 days out of the year. What you'll see is our software can scale to meet some of the largest Citrix and Horizon deployments out there, but we have an ease of use and price profile that allows us to meet the needs of small to medium-sized organizations. And I see we've got some health systems here. We are known as the healthcare IT standard. That is because we have business and technical relationships with every major EHR vendor, Cerner, Epic, Allscripts. With that, we have purpose-built modules that allows you to see the true end-user experience and performance looking across that EHR application, the underlying infrastructure supported by Citrix Horizon, as well as end-user behavior. We ensure that these health systems can proactively address issues so that clinicians and medical staff are not impacted. So with that then, let's jump into the topic at hand. The questions that we hear repeatedly, I know Avi gets this all the time when he's talking with our clients, is, can we use the data from Goliath so that we can document and prove, one, if our remote employees are working, and two, what is that actual end user experience? I was talking to one of our clients just last week, and what they said is now that everyone is remote, one of the biggest challenges is people will often tell their manager, oh, I couldn't get that project done because Citrix wasn't loading. I couldn't access that application, so I'm a little behind on my work. And what management would like to know is Citrix or those applications actually not performing the way they should? Or are employees taking a little bit of advantage of being remote, knowing that there are challenges with these systems? And so the goal for today is we're going to show how you can leverage Goliath and the data we provide so that you can truly provide answers around what that end user experience is and truly identify if employees are working and when they're working. Now, before we show the data and some of the reports we can provide, I want to answer one question that always comes up preemptively, which is, this is great, but how much effort is it to deploy Goliath just to get data out and provide these reports, whether it be to management or a business user? And this, Avi, I think this comes up every single time we talk to somebody. The reality is the steps to value with Goliath is extremely simple and easy. We can get you up and running and looking at data in less than 2 hours. And it's because of that embedded intelligence and automation where we're going to auto-discover and auto-deploy into your entire infrastructure, whether it be Citrix or Horizon. We're going to automatically begin to monitoring those key elements and thresholds that we've identified, and we're going to start collecting data from all of your user sessions. So you're going to immediately start seeing data that you can start reporting back into. And again, it's because all of this is built into the product. And because of the way that Citrix is architected, you do not have to put an agent on every machine. In fact, we're able to use our agentless technology with Citrix or VMware Horizon, along with API, so that we're capturing that information, and then we can provide you insights looking at the information both in real time and historically. And when organizations deploy it in this manner, here are some of the use cases that they're able to solve. It's not always as simple of, are my employees working? That absolutely comes up. People want to know, people aren't used to working from home. Are they truly working while they're home? I was talking to a health system, and they really had some questions. Now that our team that does registration and scheduling are at home, are they always available? Because it seems like the same staff keep taking the calls. So we know some people are heavily working, but are other of the members working as hard as the others? They really want data before they ever make an accusation that someone's not working. The other thing is it's not just about working, but it's applications being used. I was talking to a client in the UK, and when everyone went home and started to work remotely, they almost panicked and said, let's give everyone access to everything, because I'm not sure what they were using. We rolled out new Citrix environments. We want to make sure that everyone has access to everything right now because we don't want to be any difference in our customer service. But now they're going, now that everyone is permanently working from home, do they actually need access to the applications that we've given them access to? And so they really want to understand not only are what applications being used, but by which teams, by which groups. Can we go back and maybe reduce some of our licensing because people really don't need access to those applications? We actually have a user story on this next one with Empire Office. And it was actually HR that was driving this use case in that they wanted to know when our employees are working. So they were a family-owned business. They had been accustomed to everyone working actually in Manhattan. And they wanted to know, now that people are working from home, what does the work schedule look like? And what they saw initially was heavy trends where people were working earlier in the day. They were taking some time off mid-afternoon. The assumption is they were helping their kids with remote learning. And then they were getting back online in the evening time. HR was taking that data to start to identify, should they shift when they were holding some company meetings? Should they shift the way that they were structuring and organizing individual days? We also have seen some people report back that people are working more. And so what was a concern of if our employees are working enough became a concern of, I think our employees are working too much, and do they have that right balance? And then the other piece of data that we've heard, and I actually have heard this now from several clients, some are in healthcare, some are in telecom. We've been working with some managed service providers around this, is that as an IT pro, I'm constantly getting asked questions from our security and compliance team. So here I am putting out fires when it comes to remote working. Management wants to know, are they really working? Do we have reports to help? And the security team's coming in and going, do you see any anomalies in behavior? So do you happen to be able to, could you tell me that if the average employee works from 7 to 8 o'clock at night, can you see if all of a sudden they start logging in at 3 a.m.? Can you tell me who is using PowerShell scripts? Because that's a threat. So if, let's say, Avi every day is coming in from 7 to 8, and all of a sudden he shows up logging in to Horizon at 3 a.m. and running PowerShell scripts, could you tell me that information? And so we have IT pros and security teams looking at the data, really trying to identify, are there anomalies? And because of that, is that a potential threat or risk? We have a very large healthcare organization that uses this data for policy enforcement. And so one of their Citrix policies is that if someone hasn't been active in their Citrix session for the past hour, automatically log them out. And the compliance team came to them and said, well, that's a great policy. Can you prove to me it's working? And so they actually provide them our reports on a monthly basis and show, look, there has never been a session that has been inactive over an hour. And it proves that that policy is now compliant. And similarly, there's a lot more actions that come about user behavior. I was talking to a Citrix CTP, and one of the things that they're often asked is, how many people are using USB drives and third-party peripherals? Could you get me that information? Because again, that's another security risk. So when people are asking, or maybe you're looking for this information around how are my users actually using Citrix or Horizon, when are they using Citrix and Horizon, and for what purposes, that's the type of data and information that Goliath can provide to you. So Avi, if you want to go into this out-of-the-box report that we offer, this is what it looks like in a standard deployment. Again, you don't have to do any work to set this up. This is the type of data that we're going to start to extract for you. So you're going to see every user session that occurs. You're going to see how they're connecting in. So you can identify, are they a remote worker? Are they coming in from the office? Here's where you can immediately start to detect anomalies if you start seeing connected via addresses that don't make sense. You can see when they started their session, when they ended their session. And then finally, you can see how long was that session. And based on the length of session, how active were they in it? How many hours were they working and how many hours were they not working? Then we have a column for inactivity maps. And this one is where, one, that healthcare organization was using to determine that people were being logged out because none of their inactivity was over an hour. But we also have organizations, we had one that asked us specifically for this data because they said it's normal. People are not going to be active in their session for, if they're active for 5 hours, they're not going to be necessarily typing on the keyboard or moving their mouse or running a video for 5 hours of that, right? But what I want to know is how many people are gone for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. They log in and walk out. So that inactivity max was really important for organizations to really understand. If that's high, there's a good likelihood someone is not necessarily working. And then this is for Zen Apps, so you can see what applications were being used during that session. So again, these reports can be delivered on real time, and we'll show that in a minute. They can be delivered historically. You can run them based on user, based on location. So there's a lot of filtering that you can do for these reports, and they can automatically be emailed to anyone that wants this information. Obviously, going to the next slide, I know we showed Citrix. We have very similar data for Horizon, which is going to show you the active hours by user. This is shown in a more graphical fashion, so you can really see how active, what were the logon times for those end users. So this is available both for Citrix as well as for VMware Horizon, and it's Citrix virtual desktops as well as applications. Now let's go to the second question, right? And so the second question comes in all shapes and formats. So again, I gave that story around users complaining that things are slow or I couldn't get my work done because I couldn't load the application. Now what people really want to know, what is that actual user experience? Sure, we get tickets, we respond to them, but we also know user apathy has set in. I was talking to someone before and they said it really makes them cringe when they talk to a user and say, yeah, I've waited a while to file a ticket. Even though it takes me 2 minutes to log in, that's when I get my coffee every day. We as IT pros, we don't want to hear that. We want to be able to be proactive and really address these issues. So we have organizations using our end user experience report for a variety of use cases. One is to really prove to management the true user experience. I was talking to a client once and they said, one of their biggest challenges is management will be in a meeting and someone, they blamed marketing, raises their hand and says, has anyone else had slowness issues? Because it's been really bad for me. Now you're on the radar. All it takes is one casual comment. And so in order to fight that perception, you need data to be driven in reality. And that's what we can provide. We can show you what are the average logon times. Are people struggling when it comes to logging into Citrix or Horizon? We can show you latency, right? Some people are being asked, has the home office environment really ruined latency speeds and timing? Is home Wi-Fi, home ISP a big issue? Should we be compensating our employees to upgrade their ISP provider so that they can be more effective at work? You don't want to make those decisions. They can be very costly without data. We also hear from this. We worked with a children's hospital and they have SLAs. They have to have their logon times be under 30 seconds. And so one of the things that they needed to be able to do is separate from home or when they were actually in the hospital, because they didn't want the home worker to necessarily show that they were above their SLAs, because they can't control that home worker's environment. They can't control the ISP speed. They can't control what else is going on in the network or even the user's behavior or endpoint. And so they wanted to be able to show, yes, we're meeting our SLAs when we are at the hospital, or maybe it's your own office environment, but when people are home, we are seeing problems with logon time. Another thing, as we were preparing for this, Avi and I were running through use cases, and he said he was on a call where, one of the frustration points was everyone will say, yeah, IT's doing fine, here, not a ton of complaints, and all of a sudden that yearly survey comes out. And all of a sudden, the scores are low. And as an IT individual, you're sitting back going, what just happened, right? Well, no one's reported because apathy set in, as I said before. But once they're staring at the screen, they kind of go, yeah, things have been kind of slow. No, I'm dissatisfied. And so, again, you need data so that, one, you're not going to be surprised by any type of scores. And two, if they do come out and say, it might not be an issue when it comes to Citrix or Horizon, here's what we're seeing, right? Or you've already addressed some of the issues, proving that it might be a network issue, a storage issue, a home Wi-Fi issue. And then the other thing we hear about is migrations. I was just talking to a hospital and they have Epic, and what they say is Epic requires 4 to 5 upgrades every year. That's just Epic. So then when they're thinking about doing Citrix upgrades, when they're thinking about moving from on-prem to the cloud, all that requires tests. And right now, a lot of it's manual. What they'd love was to be able to automate so they could test performance before the migration, whether it be to the cloud or an upgrade, and then at the end, go ahead and test and see if they can go ahead and meet or exceed performance expectations. We actually have a user story with an MSP that said they almost upgraded Windows 10, and it was only after looking at Goliath data they realized there was an issue, and they held out the rollout. They said it would have been a huge black mark on their record if they rolled out Windows 10 only to have to pull it back because performance was so negatively impacted. So when you talk about understanding that actual user experience, there's a lot of ways that our clients today use the data. And the way we add data is by having these conversations all the time with IT pros like yourself to ensure we're providing you the information you need so that you're not spending your days hunting and pecking and trying to put together reports. Instead, you have them automatically to really help defend what's going on. So here's an example of our Citrix end user experience report, very similar to what you saw before out of the box with the last report. But what you can see here is we're reporting on some of those key metrics like logon performance, ICA latency, client speed. So here you can then again filter and address. One of the great things with our reports is they're all available in CSV format. You can also go ahead and leverage it with PowerShell or Tableau. So we have many clients that are looking at this data, exporting it, and then even manipulating it in a way that they need to display to management. What they tell us is that they were trying to get this information from Director, or they were trying to go into the databases. One, it might not even exist if they're looking for historical information. And two, if it does exist, it's such a manual effort to find what they need that they spend days trying to create one report for management. And then the next slide will again show you that we've got the same information when it comes to Horizon. So this is just an example of a logon duration report. And we're not only showing you logon times, but we're showing you logon times broken down by the different logon stages. So you can use this not only to report to management, but also drill into if there is a problem. And one of the things about our reports is this is not a roll-up. We hear this often where, well, it's great, I get trending data, but let's see that I see during the logon initiation phase, there's a problem. But I can't actually get to the data to understand who has the problem so I can diagnose it. All of these, you can drill into every individual user session that's making this data up, so you can also identify root cause of issues so you can resolve them and then again document them. So with that, I think, Avi, let's show everyone today how easy it is to go ahead and run these reports using Goliath. You know, you can schedule them, you can run them on demand. As Avi pulls this up, again, I can't tell you how many times we talk with clients and they say, this has been a lifesaver, because all of a sudden, my manager comes out of an exec meeting and says, we have to get this data and we need to provide it by noon tomorrow. Again, they would have been working all night to get the data. Now they can come and create these reports if it's not immediately out of the box, configure it to what's needed, and instead of working all night trying to mine information, they have it available at their fingertips. Avi, you want to walk through the demo?
Certainly. So yeah, where I'm at within the technologies under the reports section. Right here you can see all the available reports that we're running in our lab. I'll first show how to create a new one and then explain what's displayed here. So anytime that you want to create a new report, all you have to just do is click on new report. Here you see a couple of the different options such as performance reporting, Citrix specific reports, alert and log analysis. So say if you want to run a Citrix report, you have published apps and desktops as well as your virtual desktops there. Say we want to run a report on end user productivity. So just click that, take it to the next section where here you have the ability to sort by any particular column. So whether if you want to sort by user, if you want to sort by percentage of time that they were interacting within their session, whether you want it to be, the highest, the users who are interacting the most, or if you want to have it reverse ordered where it's, the users who are having the least amount of interaction within their sessions. And then you can choose to include or exclude specific users into the report. Different ways to display the time durations, as well as the different optional columns that you want to include in the report. And again, all this can be, as Stacy mentioned, exported out via CSV, so you can to Excel, where you can always, manipulate the data, average it out, change the metrics. And so then, as far as once you've selected the parameters of the report that you want to run, now you just choose what part of the environment that you want it to run on. So is it a particular delivery group where you want to just have that portion of the environment reporting be sent up to their business line managers, or do you want to run a report on the environment as a whole? I'll just do that in this case. Have the name for the report, so end user productivity reports. Say for a health system, maybe they'll put in, clinicians as the report. Type of description, assign a report owner. So this can have it be for anyone who's running the report, or say in IT, if you want to just have your own set of reports be running, you can then just be able to select yourself as the user, and then each report would just file under your name. Then you decide how you want to share out the reports. So whether you're going to email it out, whether you're going to send it out via PDF or CSV, and then how you want to schedule it. So you have the option, again, as Stacy mentioned, you can run them on demand. You can run them hourly, daily, weekly, monthly. You can have them run every, Monday, so you can see for, the previous week and have it first thing in the morning, or you can run it again daily, where every single morning at 6 a.m. you have the report in your inbox. Then as far as for the reporting time period, do you want to have granular detail per, for just the last day, or are you looking for a report for the past week? just do on demand as an example. So then it's as simple as that. To be able to schedule a report, it would then show up in here where this is all the reports that you have scheduled to run. So you have the report name, the description, the type of report, the owner of the report, the schedule. So is it scheduled to run every day? Is it scheduled to run every week? The last time that it was run and the next time that it's scheduled to run. You can run any of these on demand, and you can also view all of the previous times that this report was run. So then say when you want to actually take a look at the reports, all you have to do is click on it and it'll pull up the most recently run report, and then you have the data right there. You're able to flip through to the next, the previous report if you want to take a look at that. And then with all of these, again, you can either print it out, you can email it, you can export it via, PDF or CSV. So the flexibility as well as the granular detail that you're able to have with these reports is something that our clients tell us is incredibly valuable for, whether you're trying to analyze the environment and see the overall health, or if it's been an initiative sent down from management to have these reports be sent up to them.
So before Avi jumps out of here, real quick, two things that I think is always valuable to point out is, one, this is not a demo system that we spent hours putting a ton of reports in. This is literally, when I talk about that embedded intelligence and automation, this is all here at the fingertips. All that data is ready to use. You do not need to spend time configuring it. The other key element that I wanted to highlight here is, and I see a few questions that come through, so I have a feeling Avi will be back in the technology. But this is all part of the entire Goliath set of software. So this is not a separate reporting module. This is not an add-on. This is all embedded into the product. So if you're immediately looking at some of these reports and you start to notice something that doesn't make sense or might be a problem, you can immediately go back and see that user session. And I think Avi here in a minute will probably demo because I see a question come in. But I really want to emphasize this is not something separate. Now, if you want to give people certain access rights so that they can see this and run reports, and you don't want someone else to run reports, right? There's that flexibility in the product as well. All right, Avi, we're going to wrap it up here shortly. So we do have questions that have come in. If you have additional questions, please do submit them here in the Q&A box. I think, Avi, you hit on most of these points already, but I just wanted to emphasize, right, how can you use this data? Our clients use this data in a variety of ways. They share it, right? They immediately send a PDF and Excel. As I mentioned, they can send it through CSV files so they can manipulate the data, create PowerPoints around it. In fact, I've worked with clients helping them with their CSV files. They can email it. You can print it out. You can integrate it with third-party tools. So if you want to integrate it into your ticketing system, like a ServiceNow, we have clients that say, we don't use email anymore. We only use Slack. Great. We can go ahead and integrate into that. We can also integrate with an event management system like Splunk. So we have organizations that are using this data in their traditional workflow. And then you can enhance it using all of the out-of-the-box reports that we have and configuring them to meet their needs, using the different dashboards, or even visualize it using Power BI or Tableau. And so with that, then, let's turn over to questions. I do want to let everyone know, in case you drop off early, if you have additional questions, if you want to see a custom demo, if you'd like free access so that you can run these reports, email techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com. We have a number of clients that use this to really get out of a jam because they had a question come up from a manager. They use our 30-day trial. They're able to answer the questions, and then they also prove value to their management team. So with that, we have our first question from Maria. Does a hospital that uses Cerner have to acquire the Goliath module in order to access these reports? So Maria, great question. Yes, if you want to use these reports through Cerner, you do need to leverage Goliath. However, the good news is Cerner resells Goliath. We are the only one that has a integration with RHO, the hosted Cerner module. So you can either come to us or you can go to your Cerner rep, and I can tell you we are a fraction, a hair fraction of the cost that you would have paid for Cerner. So yes, it does require Goliath, but we have a number of Cerner hospitals, as you see here on the screen, from Universal Health Services, Ascension, Common Spirit, that are using it in their environment today. All right, next question comes from Damien. You showed the report, but can you troubleshoot if a user has slow logon and tell me why they have a slow logon? Avi, I'm going to let you take.
Sounds good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reporting functionality is great. Oftentimes, the reason why people actually, go with our technology is for the troubleshooting capability. So the question was about logons, I believe. So yeah, let me show you how we can take care of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip over to the technology and pull up where I'm going to start is our Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Session Display. And this populates with all the Citrix sessions in your environment, both your active and your historical ones, so that say if a user is saying, hey, my logon times have been slow for the past 3 weeks, you can quickly be able to search for that user just by typing in their name and pull up all of their sessions from the past few weeks, take a look at all their logon times right here. And then when you want to investigate what the root cause is, you just click on the user. What will populate is a screen that has all the high-level key data points that went into this user session, from the client endpoint through their logon process. And we have a logon summary breakdown right here. But where I typically go to actually troubleshoot logon issues is this dedicated logon tab. And from here, and this is for Citrix, we have the same functionality for Horizon, where you're going to get more stages of the logon process than really any other tool that's out there. So when taking a look at this screen, I'll just run through it and how it can be used to troubleshoot, is that you have a couple different sections of the page. The top is what's happening at the brokering stages. So, it's happening with delivery controller, drive mapping, credentials authenticating, profile load, and you have the duration of each stage, as well as a Gantt chart to quickly draw your attention to where are the main contributing parts of a long logon. The top right, you have what's going on at Citrix Receiver, so the ISA file download, session creation, and this is without deploying any technology to the endpoint machines themselves. Then at the bottom of the page, you have the logon stage details from the session host. So client and server validation. For authentication, you're able to see which OUs that user was a part of, the domain controller that authenticated the user, the LDAP calls, and then for group policies. We'll show you each group policy down to the policy name and how long each one took to execute. Now, this is in our lab environment, so let me pull up a screenshot that I have that actually, I think it drives home the value a little bit better. Let me pull that up, and how our clients actually use this. So say again, you get proactively alerted about a long logon. You take a look, you see it was over 200 seconds. You immediately recognize that the profile load was consuming most of that time. You then take a look at group policies, see that those are taking 190 seconds, drill down into a specific VDI drive mapping policy, where in this particular scenario, it was mapped incorrectly, which drove the 180-second time that it took. And so immediately you're able to see where the main contributing parts of a long logon. You now know where you need to focus your attention. And we've had clients that have been able to cut down on their logon times by over 80% because of this type of detail.
The other thing I want to also notify you of is you can alert on this as well. So when we talk about everything you see here, there's a lot of this that you can report on, but you can also alert on it. So if you want to set up alerts where your logon times are being high, you can go ahead and get those alerts to you. So yes, you can wait to run a report, maybe look at it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, but you can also get those alerts if you're really trying to identify if people are having major issues, right? And you can set that threshold, right? Maybe you don't care it takes 2 minutes, but if you're finding people with over 5 minutes, you want to be alerted on it. Avi, Damien has a follow-up question. Can you prove end user behavior is root cause? And maybe as you bring that up, I can give a use case here if you want to bring back up the demo screen. So this has come up, this came up even before the pandemic, but I'd say even more with the pandemic. And we had a client that was telling us they were talking, it happened to be a hospital, and they were talking to a clinician that said, I think they were using Epic at the time. It's become almost unusable, right? It's so slow, I can't even do it. But when they looked at, their infrastructure that was being run by Horizon, everything looked fine. When they looked at Epic, everything looked fine, right? When they talked to the network team, everyone said everything's looking fine, but they were seeing latency. So they knew that the user wasn't necessarily complaining, but they couldn't really identify what the reason was. And so they were able to go in and see it from what Avi's going to show you. And what ended up being the root cause was when they looked at it, they saw a spike in audio bandwidth. They also saw a spike in graphically intense programs. So they asked them, well, what are you doing? And he finally said, well, I'm looking at different images within Epic, so probably with x-rays or such, but it takes me so long that I play YouTube because I have training that I've got going on and I'm trying to go ahead and handle two things at once. That user had no idea that they were making performance even worse in an environment that was already kind of slow by trying to do a very intense program and running YouTube. So really active, productive worker, but not the best way to use Citrix, especially the applications being delivered through it. Avi, do you want to show how you can go kind of show that and prove that to drive that conversation with the end user? Because I think probably many on the phone have been in that situation where you ask the user, are you doing anything unusual? No, I'm just using Epic, right? Users, they don't even think about what they're doing. So when you have data, you can really start drilling in and showing them they have to be doing something that's impacting the experience. Go ahead, Avi.
Yeah, Sage, I think you brought up some great points there because as we all know, end users aren't always going to abide by Citrix best practices on what they should be doing within their sessions. And so while, everything could look fine from a resource perspective, everything can be fine on the network, but sometimes it's actually end user behavior that can impact the performance of the sessions. And we're able to give insight into end user behavior. Where I just flipped to within the technology, again, we were back here in the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop session display, and I just flipped over to the ICA and HDX tab. And the bottom left-hand chart on this piece right here is the ICA channel usage. And the way how Citrix is architected and what happens with the ICA protocol is that there's virtual channels that handle different end user bandwidth utilizations and the type of functions that they're doing within their session. So for example, there's the audio bandwidth channel. Was this user streaming audio? Clipboard bandwidth. Did the user have a large copy and paste job that hung up the session? Thin wire bandwidth, which is the Citrix display adapter. Was this user doing something graphically intensive within their session? And based off of the type of bandwidth that is being utilized within the session, you can get an insight into end user behavior. You can notice that each of these are inbound and outbound. This is from the server perspective. So for example, audio bandwidth in, say if the user's utilizing Teams and they're talking into the session. Say if audio bandwidth out, was that user streaming Spotify during their session? Like how Stacy was just mentioned, maybe they're playing some music while they're waiting for a business critical application to load, only adding to the performance issues. And so by seeing what the user was doing within their session during the time frame of historical sessions or active sessions, you can correlate spikes in end user behavior, for example, thin wire bandwidth, with spikes in round trip time, where you can then see, okay, you know what, this user was having performance issues, but they're also streaming a video. So it gives you that insight into what would typically be a blind spot to be able to assist with the troubleshooting process. So that's one way to be able to help identify end user behavior as a potential bottleneck, to answer the question.
Great, thanks, Avi. All right, next question comes from Nicole, and she says they get various reports from their client. They're asked for various reports from our compliance team around end user activity. Do you have customers that use the productivity report for auditing purposes? So yes, as I shared, absolutely, we have security and compliance teams that are looking at this data in a variety of ways, right? And so one of the things that's come up from compliance teams specifically is, are you enforcing your Citrix policies? So Citrix policies might be who has access to Citrix. It might be how long, that's the example I gave before, where they can only be logged in for an inactive amount of time for over an hour, right? Maybe you limit who can use USB drives and you want to confirm that only those that have USB drives are the ones that are using it. You would actually use the channel data that Avi just showed. So absolutely, it really depends on the question and what policy you're trying to prove. But 100% this data has been used in those use cases. All right, Razi asks, I'm a service provider. We get asked for information. Do you have people that charge for this? So great question, Ravi. We work with a number of managed service providers, resellers, and they 100% do charge for this report. So they do have clients asking them for it, and then they're charging back. We also have a number of managed service providers that are using our complete set of software. So you saw all of that troubleshooting that Avi just showed. They're using it both to help them solve issues. In fact, I'm just getting ready to publish a use case for a managed service provider where they came to us and said, we looked at your technology and we liked it, but it was hard to justify necessarily, any additional spend. That comes up a lot with managed service providers. But they said on twofold. One, we had all of those users being remote. We simply didn't have the staff to keep up with it. And two, we had a lot of dissatisfaction and users were blaming us, but it was really their home Wi-Fi. So we needed a way with data to prove that it was not our fault. And then they said the way they actually then ultimately paid for the software is they used all that troubleshooting and proactive nature we have, and then they charged for the report, so they were able to drive revenue from using Goliath. So long-winded answer of saying, yes, we have managed service providers that charge for this report. This one comes from Kathy. Can I have different reports for remote workers versus those working in the office? Avi, you want to address that one?
Yes, absolutely. You can run the reports based off a number of different variables, including how they connected into the environment. Were they coming in through a NetScaler from externally, or were they internal and accessing the storefront page? So you can absolutely filter based off a number of different variables on what information is that you're looking for.
Sunil asked, how long do you store your data? So Sunil, for us, there is no limitation, right? We don't limit how long you store the data. Of course, based on the infrastructure you want to support, there is some dependency upon that, right? But we have many of our clients that are storing our data 6 months up to a year, right? So they have that information to report back on. Keith asked, do you support Citrix Cloud? Yes, Keith, we support Citrix Cloud. In fact, we have a Citrix Cloud connector module. So we're not only monitoring the health of Citrix Cloud and determining if it's available, is it performing as expected, we actually monitor the services within the Citrix Cloud connector itself. And so we can alert you if any of those cloud services are down and then automatically remediate. I was talking to somebody where they had an issue, and that they said is that they were calling in because their users were trying to log on and they were automatically being kicked out. And so whenever they called Citrix, Citrix said, oh, you just have to restart the proxy service. What they wanted then to use Goliath for was to automatically know that the proxy service was down and restart it, so they never had users impacted and they never had to make that call to Citrix. So that's what our Citrix Cloud Connector module can do, is both the health of the cloud as well as the individual connectors. Michelle asked, how long is your trial for? It's for 30 days by default, but if you need that extended, we can absolutely work with that. And our trials are completely free, as well as the support. It's fully supported if you're trialing our software. All right, Frank asks, how do you price? So we offer pricing really by what IT elements do you want to monitor? And from there, we work on our pricing scheme. But as I said, and you see here with the logos, we really have a price profile that fits the need of every organization. And when you think about your spend, whether it be on Citrix or your EHR applications, we are a small fraction of that price. So we always like to say, don't let price stand in the way, because I think people are often surprised all of the capabilities they can get within our pricing. Frank also asked, how easy is it to deploy? Well, Frank, I hope you missed my slide on this one, but I'll repeat it. It's really easy to deploy Goliath. Because of our embedded intelligence and automation, we auto-discover your entire environment, we auto-deploy, and we immediately start collecting data. So literally within 90 minutes, you can start seeing some of this information around log-on times, latency times, session performance. So this is not something that is hard to deploy. We have organizations that literally in the same week of buying our technology are presenting what they found to management. All right. Avi, I think I'm going to allow you to answer this one. This one comes from Ray. Can you proactively alert me if Citrix or Horizon is unavailable or underperforming before my users even start their day?
Yes, we certainly can. A lot of the technology is, based on being proactive and alerting you to any performance issues. And we do even have a specific piece of the technology that is designed specifically to basically be think of it almost as a synthetic user that is launching real Citrix and VMware Horizon sessions to test and confirm the availability of all the resources, making sure that the entire delivery infrastructure is working as it should be. I can actually, if we have time, Stacy, I could pull up a quick demo of that as well. I can do that.
Yeah, maybe if you pull up a demo, I'll give it use case. So we actually work with one of the largest U.S. airlines, and they came to us pre-pandemic when they were very busy, but they came to us because they had their reservation specialists throughout the United States as well as in Europe, and they used an application called Sabre, and it was on Citrix, hosted actually in AWS. And they said, we can't wait for our users to tell us that they have logon problems into Sabre. For every minute that they have an issue, we're losing clients, right? We're not reserving tickets. We're not helping them. There's dissatisfaction. How do we get ahead of this issue? And so we work with them, and Avi's going to show you a demo where we are continually testing from multiple locations the availability and performance of Sabre through Citrix. So now, they're alerted immediately if the application is down or not performing as expected, so they can resolve it before users are even impacted. And this is really important because they have their reservation specialists not only across the US, but in Europe as well. And so they wanted a way that they could proactively address these issues and not wait for a phone call or have someone in Europe experience a problem only for someone in the US to support them hours later. Avi, you want to show how it's used?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the way how this works is we have a light piece of technology that's deployed onto a laptop, a VMware workstation, typically deployed at each different physical office location, or in the scenario that Stacy was just talking about, where we can deploy that into the cloud and the launches will take place from that particular endpoint. And it'll be logging in just the exact same way that an end user would, entering credentials, confirm the authentication, navigate within the storefront page, or for Horizon, going through the Horizon process. And so then where I'm in the technologies, the application availability analysis tab, this is where you can investigate all of those launches that are taking place. At the top here, you have a dashboard where the blue bars represent the average launch time, and the yellow trend line shows the overall availability at any point in time. You can filter this based off of date range. You can filter this based off of the location where the launches are taking place. So a health system client of ours where they have over 60 different hospital sites has this technology deployed at each of those different sites. So you'd see each of those locations right here. And then the specific application or desktop. So say, for example, if you're launching an EHR application, right, your Microsoft Business Critical applications, you'd see those there. And then at the bottom, you're able to see details on each one of these specific launches. So the date and time, the resource, the location where the launch was taking place from, and ultimately whether the launch was successful or if it failed. And if it did fail, one, you'd receive an alert about it. You can then come here, take a look at what stage it failed at, and then get further detail, where we're going to show you details of each step of the logon process, as well as screenshot evidence as far as exactly what had presented itself to the end user. One, this is helpful where you don't have to ask an end user to replicate the issue. Two, if a session isn't initiated, sometimes that's very difficult to troubleshoot. So by having the logs, you can see specific details of where the failure took place. Quick example, say if you have a maintenance window overnight, you do some updates to a particular application that leads it to not be published anymore. This would then run its course, fail at the enumeration stage because the application wasn't available to be selected by the technology. You get that proactive alert and you're able to solve it before it impacts the end users.
Great. And Avi, actually, if you want to keep that open, Ray had a follow-up. Before I ask his follow-up, though, again, I want to point out this is all fully integrated, right? So we've talked to organizations before, and they're like, oh, I've had some synthetic logons before. It was great to have, but one of the problems I had is when I saw an issue, I had to go refine that information so that I could go ahead and solve it. That troubleshooting information, the reporting information, all of that is in this single screen that Avi's showing. So if you do come across an issue and you want to do more troubleshooting than what's provided right here, you have access to all of that data and information. Now, the follow-up question Ray had was, what other types of alerts do you have related to end user performance? So Avi, if you want to bring up maybe just our alert screen, kind of the high-level answer to that, Ray, is we literally have hundreds of these monitoring rules or monitors built into the product. This is the intelligence that we've added in, working with clients throughout the years. So we have alerts here, and these aren't even all of them, for really any IT element, condition, failure point that impacts end user experience. So we're looking at things like applications. So if you've Metatech, you can see with our Metatech module, we've got a lot of those pre-built alerts. Up above, there was ones around Azure, AWS, really any type of service, Windows-based service, if it's a syslog, if it's an SMP, we can go and collect that data and we can alert upon it. So we've built in the ones that are most commonly used by our clients, but we can also add additional ones. And for every single thing that we're alerting on, you can also have automatic remediation. So we work with a managed service provider, for example. They're constantly monitoring the VMs. And anytime any of the memory starts to get too high on a VM, they will automatically clear the disk space. So not only are they alerting on it, they're preemptively solving the solution all through automation, so user performance is never impacted, and that IT pro even isn't taking time around it. Avi, anything you want to add about all the different things that we can alert on?
Just that, it's, as Stacy mentioned, it's not just, looking at Citrix or Horizon. We're looking for hundreds of events, conditions, and failure points that can impact end user experience. So whether that's, AD, group policies, the different type of, profiles. So it's, all these monitoring rules are based off of, industry best practices and our own, experience and knowledge on it. And these monitoring rules are automatically deployed across your environment. So it takes, next to no configuration on your end to have these monitoring rules already be firing off, proactively alerting. But you do also have the ability to create any of your own monitoring rules that you want. So if there's a specific process or a specific service that you want to have, notifications based off of thresholds on, you can easily be able to set that up right within the technology.
And since this webinar was about reporting and documenting, each one of these alerts can have a report associated. So if you are automatically remediating, you can run a report every time an alert's been triggered over the past week, how often it's been remediated. We have one user, there's a print service alert, and they say anytime I have to restart the printer within a 15-minute span, now send me an alert, because now there's a problem that restarting the print service is just not going to fix. And they report on that. All right, Avi, we have a question from Jen. She wants to know, can you prove if home Wi-Fi is the root cause of poor performance? Maybe if you pull it up, I'll give it a use case. So the answer is absolutely yes. And one of the logos you'll see here is Penn National Insurance. So before the pandemic, we actually worked with Penn National. They had a work from home initiative, and they were really looking to hire across the US. And so they implemented Citrix, they implemented iGel technologies for their thin client. They had a lot going on. But what happened is, as they started to roll it out, users started to complain that their soft layer phones were dropping. And of course, there was a small panic from management that said, this might not work. Let's hold on. If we're having issues, we spent a lot of money. Let's not move forward on this. We'll stop the rollouts of these programs. And so they put Goliath in, and what they were able to identify is, yes, Citrix, iGel, all of these infrastructure components were working, and they were able to prove that, one, not every user was having an issue, but the users were having an issue. They got on and said, it looked like performance was fine till about 3 o'clock. What changed in your home environment at 3 o'clock? Again, pre-pandemic. And they said, my kids came home from school. Yeah, they're probably playing Xbox, or they're maybe streaming Netflix. So what happened is everything was fine when there was one person on the network, but as soon as multiple people got on the network, there was not enough bandwidth through Citrix to support the soft layer phone call. Avi, do you want to show how they were able to see that in the technology?
Yeah, certainly. So where we're back over is to the Citrix Virtual Apps Desktop session display. And where you can quickly be able to find out if the home Wi-Fi is the root cause is really from these three graphs right here. You take a look at round trip time, which I'm sure everyone on the line knows is the amount of time from when a user does an action for it to traverse the network, be processed on the session host, display back at the client endpoint. And any time that round trip time is above, say, 350 milliseconds, that's when latency will be apparent to the end user. And we have that threshold represented here by this orange line. So you can easily see, okay, was this user having an issue? Now, in this case, where we're talking about the Wi-Fi being the issue, you take a look at network latency, okay, see if there's a spike at that same time. This network latency is for the entire network journey for this user Citrix session. Now, this is going to directly show up in the technology is this connection speed metric here. This is the amount of bandwidth that's available for Citrix receiver or the workspace app at that end user's location. So when they're working remotely, this is type of visibility that you don't have with some of the other tools out there, is that you can then be able to see, okay, there was 27 megabits of connection speed available at that location, and then it dropped all the way down to 2.8, which isn't nearly enough to support a satisfactory Citrix session. I now know that the bottleneck with the high round trip time was caused by the network, and specifically the amount of bandwidth that's available at that end user's Wi-Fi connection point.
Great. Well, thanks, Avi. And why don't you keep that up, because we have a follow-up question from Anthony on alerts, and he's asking if a specific alert is not there, how can you customize? So it's all from the same alert screen, right? Again, any type of service or any syslog or anything that's out there, we can go ahead and capture that information and then provide an alert onto that. It's all done in the same area. I don't know if you want to show, Avi. It's not complex.
Yeah, no, it's very simple. So for any modern rule that you want to create, all you have to do is from the modern rule section, click new, and then here we have different modern rule options based off of categories. So whether if we're talking about, event log watch, if we're looking for something Citrix or Horizon specific, if you're looking for a specific process, a file watch rule, we have all these already set up so that say if you want to create a new one, you can just select it and then enter the parameters. So maybe a specific process, the specific thresholds that you want to be alerted on. Was it, did that process use over 50% CPU? Apply to what parts of the environment that you want the modern rule on. You can have it, different scheduling capabilities, different notifications. So for healthcare, we can even notify you via beeper if you want, via text, email, up to different ticketing systems. So if you're using something like a ServiceNow, as Stacy mentioned earlier. And then again, you have the automatic remediation app options where you can restart a server, run a script right from the alert itself. So that's how easy it is to create a new role.
Yeah, I think one of the things I heard once was they said it took more time to figure out the specific event ID that they wanted to create the alert on than to actually create the alert.
Right, that happens.
Avi, we have 2 more questions, but if any has any additional, please go ahead and submit. The next one comes from Richard. You mentioned modules for healthcare. What metrics do you gather from Epic?
From Epic, I can even actually pull that up. We're pulling in, so we're integrating directly with Epic System Pulse. So we're pulling in System Pulse data all into the same console as far as the information that I was showing earlier. Let me flip over to our Epic dashboards, and to answer the question while I'm pulling this up, we're going to be pulling in, the Epic total counts, the average grefs, average web and DB requests. We're also able to show insight into the workflow latency within the Epic application itself. So here we have the Epic workflow activity dashboard, and then as far as the workflow latency dashboard here, you're able to see, workflow time, again, average DB and web requests. So it's, in a single console, you're able to analyze Epic System Pulse data, the delivery infrastructure of Epic, as well as the end user experience. Where this is really helpful is, say, as a Citrix admin, where you may not have access to Epic System Pulse data, you would with Goliath. It's all in the single console.
Yeah, we have a client that we were talking with, Rick, and I don't know your circumstance, but that was their biggest frustration point is someone would call in and say, Epic is slow. The Epic team would say, not our problem. It must be with you, the Citrix team. And the Citrix individual had no visibility into what was going on with Epic, and they weren't seeing the slowness. So they spent days with a lot of finger pointing, a lot of defending Citrix. We literally have called ourselves the Citrix defense team. So now you can see that data. So you can actually confirm if everything looks fine on your side, is everything looking fine on Epic's side? So again, the whole theme of this webinar is data is power, right? Once you have data, you can stop these perception battle that takes place with other IT teams, with management, with other vendors, app solutions, end users, and really have a conversation that's grounded in reality. So last question, Avi, comes from Amit, and I was waiting for this one because we usually get it, is how are you different from Citrix Director? You want to bring it home with this last question?
Sure. Yeah, so as far as Citrix Director, it does provide a great level of detail for Citrix itself. But as we all know, that there's a number of other components and variables that go into delivering a satisfactory Citrix session, such as the client endpoint machine, what's happening at that end user's location, the backend systems. Say you may have VMware as your hypervisor host. And let me pull up this slide real quickly that kind of does a good job of displaying this, where with Citrix Director, you're able to see really what's not red on here. But all these other highlighted red components, the endpoint locations, where they're connecting in from, the EHR modules that we've been talking about, the hypervisor layer, the VMs, the backend systems, and all that plays a significant role. So without having a full, the full visibility, that's a big difference is the amount of visibility that we're able to give into the end user experience compared to Director. And also another thing is the historical perspective of it, where since we don't average or roll up any of our data, you're able to get granular details for information that took place 2 months ago if you wanted to. So those are a couple of the differences between us and Citrix Director.
Great. Well, thanks, Avi. That looks like the last question. I appreciate many of you stayed on to go through those different questions and participate. It's always a lot more enjoyable for us when we're responding to what everyone needs. If you would like a trial, right? If you would like to see if the data that we can provide around ensuring that your employees are working from home, or what is that actual user experience, or you're looking at some of the troubleshooting capabilities, please email techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com. We'll be happy to set you up with that trial. At the end of this, there is a short survey. I think 5 or 6 questions should take you less than 60 seconds to fill out. Please do take the time. We use that information to both help ensure our webinars meet the needs of you, the IT pros, but also ensure that our follow-up is appropriate. Avi, as always, it's a pleasure working with you today, and I hope everyone has a safe and happy rest of their day. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, everyone.